It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. I'm also a former teacher. I taught for 24 years, so I'm like a moving target. I tend to move around. I do a lot of public speaking. I don't like podiums. They don't provide me comfort. They scare the hell out of me. So I'll be moving around a little bit. Also, I suffer from a disability that you may not be able to see. As I was introduced, I'm an elite endurance athlete. I've run over 160 marathons all around the world. On a typical week, I average between 200 and 240 kilometers of running a week, all year long. Now, people look at me and they think, oh my God, that guy is strong. That guy is resilient. I also suffer from PTSD. In fact, I was in my PTSD support group yesterday. I still am with CAMH. My CAMH file is massive. In addition to that, I suffer from the after effects of childhood trauma. So I'm going to talk about all of these things. So I too believe that people like me have a lot to offer in the workplace. So let's start with one of my favorite quotes, and I'll get out of the way. Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves. The last part of this resonates so strongly with me. Try to love the questions themselves. I've spent my entire life searching for answers. And it's only been in the last 4 years that I realized I've been doing this the wrong way. Instead of searching for the answers, I should have been embracing the questions. Because it's in the questions that I find out the most about me. What the edges of me look like. The boundaries of me. I should also mention that some of the things that I'll be touching upon today might be difficult for people to hear. They might trigger things in you. I'll be available after if you want to come up and talk to me, please do. I'm also going to give my email address, so if you need to and you want to, please reach out to me. Because that's part of what I do, and it's part of who I am. I grew up in an extremely violent home. From as long as I can remember, my mother was very physically abusive to me. I spent a lot of my time as a kid with bruises and welts all over my body. And I was terrified as a young child. But one of the memories that's etched on my mind, and now it's completely tattooed on my arm, is when I would lie in bed at night as the darkness began to envelop the room, and that's when I would feel the most scared. And I would lie in bed, and I'd get both palms of my hands, and I would push them firmly into my eyes. And I would hold them there for as long as I could. And then when I took them away, the most beautiful little white stars used to dance in front of me. And for a little moment in time, I felt like I was able to escape what I was feeling, where I was. I was in a safe place. And so, as I got older, I started to tattoo stars all up my arm and down my back. And I've done this as a way to remind me that no matter what I'm facing, no matter what troubling thing I'm in, I always have the decision to take myself to a safe place. I have control over how I feel in a situation that I'm in. My mom eventually left the house when I was 9 years old, and I was raised by a single father. Now, as a kid, I said I was scared, and I threw myself into every single sport, and I excelled. I was the captain of the hockey team. I was the captain of the baseball team. I was an elite track athlete in Toronto. But here's the thing. Another favorite quote of mine. Let's raise children who won't have to recover from their childhoods. One of the things I did is I played hockey, and because I played elite level hockey, and my father worked evenings and afternoons, I was typically taken to the arena and left in the care of other adults. And so, what does a sexual predator look like? Well, we all think that sexual predator is someone who drives around in an unmarked van or is ready to pull you into an alleyway. That's not often the case, and it's actually not usually the case. It can be your neighbor, it can be your father, your mother, an uncle, someone down the street, or in my case, my hockey coach. I was sexually abused at the age of 9 from my hockey coach. Now, I don't want to get into all that, because that's not where we need to go today. But that wasn't the only time sexual violence ended my life. When I was 12 years old, I stole a pack of cigarettes from my dad. Like, typical thing that 12-year-olds do. And I can remember it was a pack of Rothman cigarettes. And I was so excited. The plan was after school, because I was going home to an empty house. I didn't have to rush home ever after school. The plan was to go into a little ravine not far from my house in North Toronto and smoke some of these cigarettes. So I did that. It was in late fall. It had been a rainy fall, but it was a typically sunny and warm day. And I went into the canopy of this ravine. And I went down to the base of the ravine to smoke the cigarettes. Within 5-10 minutes of being down that ravine, 2 men approached me. Before I knew it, it turned into be a very violent act. One of them held me down, while the other one sexually assaulted and violently raped me. They left me alone in the bottom of that ravine, but not before the one who was holding me down urinated on me, and they left me. And I remember walking home to an empty house, and I can remember putting my clothes into the washing machine. And I can remember sitting in the bathtub, desperate to try to wash off that dirt, that mud, that urine, that sex. And to this day, I'm not going to lie to you, years of therapy, years of drugs, prescribed and others, there's a part of me that will never be able to get rid of all of that dirt that I feel on me. And I consider myself pretty healthy about this stuff. So, I went from being this kid who excelled in sports to suddenly, at the age of 14, I was in a hospital, in an emergency room, on a gurney, suffering my second overdose from drug and alcohol. So what the hell happened? Well, from the age of 14, I became a daily drinker, daily drug user. My life quickly spiraled out of control. I lost connection with the people and the things that meant most to me, and I started to isolate. And I started to numb the feelings out. But here's the thing. One of my favorite writers, mentors, Dr. Deborah Matte, who deals with the opioid addicts out in Vancouver's Lower East Side, says, there's no such thing as selective numbing. So as an addict, when I feel bad things, I try to numb those bad things with drugs and alcohol. And you know what? It works for a while until it doesn't work anymore. But as Dr. Matte says, there's no such thing as selective numbing. I can't just numb out the bad stuff. I numb out everything. All the love, all the support, and all the good things that may be around. So fast forward that drug and alcohol story. That went on for many, many years. I was diagnosed with bipolar depression. I had become suicidal. The last little while of my drinking was a lot of scotch every day, 3 antidepressants, lithium for the bipolar disorder, and a lot of lorazepam for panic attacks. It was not a pretty picture. A big catastrophic event happened, and I decided I couldn't drink anymore. I was going to lose my wife, and I was going to lose my young son. So I entered a treatment program. And when I was in this treatment program to address the addiction issues, I met 2 guys who were training for a marathon. And they said, hey JP, come on out and train with us. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. Because you know what, addicts do that. We just yeah, something's happening, I'm there. So I did this. And we would meet every Sunday and we would run for 2 or 3 hours and we would complain and we would moan. And it was never about how hard the running was. It was about how no one understood us now that we were sober. And no one understands how hard it is not to do the one thing that you desperately want to do. Well, the thing is, I got really successful running. I started to do very well, and some of that success that I had as a kid in athletics came back to me. But the most important thing is, in meeting these men, these 2 men, every Sunday for 5 months, what happened was, people say that the opposite of addiction is sobriety. I'm here to tell you that's not true. The opposite of addiction is connection. I started to connect to these two men, and in the process, I was showing up every week. I was accountable. They were depending on me, and I was setting a goal and living up to that goal. We all ran the marathon, and we all qualified for the Boston Marathon in our first marathon. Now, if you're not familiar with running, that's a good tip. So, I started running 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 marathons, and now we're up to over 160 of these things around the world. And everything was good. JP looked like he had his act together. He wasn't drinking anymore. He was 26 years married. He had a 24-year-old son. And he is sober for over 16 years. But as they say, you can't outrun your past. 26 years married, I sat down with my wife and for the very first time told her, I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and rape, and I think I'm going to use again, and I feel lost, and I feel scared, and I don't know what to do. So what does someone do when they get disclosed such a heavy secret? Well, I can tell you what Marianne, my wife, didn't do. She didn't doubt me for a second. She didn't try to change me. She didn't try to fix me. And she didn't try to say, it will get better. All she did, and everything she did, was she held on to me, and she said, we're going to figure this out. I went to my doctor, and I registered for a program at this place. This is called the Gatehouse. It's in Toronto's West End. They specialize in working with survivors of childhood sexual abuse. So I registered for this Toronto program. The problem was it didn't begin for 6 weeks. And in that 6 weeks period between my registering and the program starting, I had to go down to Boston to run the marathon. Marianne came down with me. It's middle of April. It was a hard marathon. At one point, the race officials had to pull me off the course because I was crying so much and I was hyperventilating. I managed to convince them to let me back out on the course, and I finished the marathon, and I collapsed into Marianne's arm in the family greeting area. My hotel was right at the finish line. I had a quick shower. Marianne checked us out of the hotel. We had about 3 hours before our flight back to Toronto that night. Within 5 minutes of being back out on the street after that marathon, the bombs went off. I don't need to go into the details of this. You can imagine. You've seen the news. You can imagine what it was like. We were right in the middle of that. When the FBI asked for news footage the next day, taken near the finish line, Marianne said, hey, I took a video of you crossing the finish line on my phone. We look at the video and we can see directly across the street from where Marianne was waiting for me to cross the line, you can see the knapsack being placed on the ground. We realized how close it was to being a very different story for us. I was devastated. We were devastated. I'd come back to Toronto. I had to take 6 months off work on medical leave to deal with the PTSD and to go through the childhood abuse trauma program at the Gatehouse. And I want to be honest with you. I consider myself fairly articulate. I'm a writer. I taught English literature for years. The problem was, I lost words. I couldn't speak. I couldn't read. I couldn't watch TV. I could barely have a conversation that lasted more than 3 or 4 words. But the one thing I could do, we had a little house out in the beaches of Toronto. I would sit on my veranda every morning, and there was an elementary school at the end of the street. And I would see the kids walking to school with their parents, and then coming back at lunch, and going back at the end of the day. And right at the end of our house, there was this little thing here. It's hard to tell, but it was a bird bath. It was right in front of the sidewalk. The sidewalk was right here. I was sitting behind that tree on our veranda. And one morning, this little girl was walking with her father to school, and like, most 6-year-olds, the father was really in a hurry to get to work. He had his business suit on, and that kid was just, screwing around like kids are meant to do, not cooperating. And the little kid was walking along the little wall at the end of our garden and stopped and took a stone out of this bird bath. Now, as I said, it's a bird bath, but when we bought that house, there was no bloody way a bird on this planet was going to land on the ground at the bottom of a tree in a neighborhood surrounded by cats. So it was a defunct bird bath. It just held stones. And this little girl picks up the stone and she takes it, and her father, I can hear the whole thing, her father said, "What are you doing? Put that stone down." And then the little girl said, but Mommy lets me do this. This is my wishing well. Every day I take a stone out and I make a wish. Right? And I'm looking right at the father. It's like, shame, shame. And he's like, oh, I'm such an idiot, right? So he's like, okay, honey, and I smile. And then they walk off, and you have to realize it's 5 months since the bombings, and I am completely lost, but something happened in the moment with that kid. I made a connection to a part of me that was missing, and a part of me that was lost. So I decided to do something for this little girl. I went into our basement, and I'm a OCD kind of guy. We have the cleanest basement on the planet. There was no leftover wood in our house, but I found an old cheese board. And I made this little sign that said, wishing bowl. Take a stone out to make a wish, put a stone in to let go of a problem. And I dropped that thing right beside the tree, and then the plan was to sit down and wait for the little girl to walk by the next day. The sign was for her. Well, guess what? She walks by the next day with her mother. I guess, father's off the duty now after that. Right? So the mother's now with her daughter, and her face lights up. Her mother reads the sign to her. She's just the happiest kid in the world. And I think, oh my God, that's the best end of the story. But the story doesn't end there. It turns out everybody that walked past our house started to do this. And I create this problem for myself because I write a blog, and it's a very well-known blog. And then the local paper finds out about this wishing well, and they write a story about it. Well, now we've got 250 people a day stopping at the wishing well. Right? And because I didn't really think out the logistics of this. Now, the bottom part says, put a stone in to let go of a problem. Apparently, there's a lot of problems in my neighborhood. So people were bringing stones from all over the place. And so, like, once a week, I had to empty the mountain of stones. We put them in the car, and we drive them back out to the beach, drop on, and then, they'd be coming back. So this little wishing well was so important. And basically what it did, it gave me hope, and that's what it made. It gave me hope, and it gave me a connection. And I remember what it was like as a kid before all that hope and connection was taken away from me. So I decided, I'm going to go back to Boston. And I'm going to do something crazy, because I'm an addict. I'm going to go back to Boston. Instead of running the marathon once, I'm going to run the marathon twice to raise money for the gatehouse. So I started at the finish line in downtown Boston, and I ran 42.2 kilometers out to the start line in Hopkinton. Then I had 30 minutes, and I turned around with the rest of the athletes, and I ran 42.2 kilometers back into downtown Boston. 84.4, don't shake your head, this gets way crazier. 84.4 kilometers, and it raised over $25,000 for this gatehouse. And there he is, on the left there, I got 2 medals for doing it. Well, I'm an addict. It created such huge media publicity. People were talking about the fact that I'm a male survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and I'm talking about it. That I'm a survivor of the bombings the year after the terrorist attack. But most of all, people started to reach out to me to say, me too. So I need to do something in Toronto, my hometown. So the following year, this is me up in the right-hand corner with our favorite premier, Kathleen Wynn. Instead of running the marathon once, twice, I ran it 3 times in the same day. I'll do the math for you, you've just eaten. That's 126.6 kilometers. And I managed to convince Premier Wynn to run the first 5 kilometers of the 3rd marathon with me in support of the It's Never Okay campaign. And that was the campaign that came out around the Jian Ghomeshi issue that reminds us we all have a role to stand up and to speak out when we see anything that makes us feel uncomfortable. So, it doesn't end there. This is my wife over here, Marianne. She's the hero of this story. We'll find this out soon. 2 years ago, I ran the Toronto Waterfront Marathon, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times in the same day. 168.8 kilometers. That's the same distance as if you got in your car at City Hall in Toronto and you drove all the way to downtown Buffalo. It's a long way. Well, I crossed the finish line and I said, I'm done. And CBC was interviewing me there. See, there's a plug. CBC was interviewing me at the finish line. I said, oh my gosh, this is great. What are you doing next year? And Marianne looks at me like, he's doing nothing next year. And I was just joking around. I haven't slept all night long. I've just run 168 kilometers. I said, you know what? I really like the hashtag 6 in the 6. Sounds good. 6 weeks ago, I ran the Toronto Waterfront Marathon, not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5 times, 6 times. 253.2 kilometers. Yeah! That's great. That's the equivalent of getting in your car from City Hall and driving all the way to Kingston. Now, we've all done that drive to Kingston. That's a long, long way. So, oh, why? The question is why? Yeah. Well, people, I do a lot of speaking, people say, why, JP, why? Or they say, haven't you just replaced one addiction with another addiction? Yes, I own that, so you don't even have to ask, yes. But here's why. 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 5 boys in Canada are survivors of childhood sexual abuse. 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 5 boys. That's why. It's hard what I do. But it doesn't compare to what it feels like to be that kid, that little boy, that little girl. I've been that little boy. I know what that feels like. Running 253 kilometers does not feel anything as remotely difficult as it did when I was a kid. People come up to me and say all the time, JP, you're strong and you're resilient. And then I say, thank you so much, and I look really uncomfortable. And then I go back to my hotel or back home, and I cry, and I feel like such a fraud, because that's not the soundtrack going on inside this head. What's going on in this head is, you're still dirty. If people realized how much work it takes for you to get your ass out the door in the morning, they wouldn't be saying that. Turns out, that's actually what the definition of resilience is. So here's this beautiful quote I like from one of my favorite books, Fugitive Pieces by Anne Myers. The mystery of wood is not that it burns, but that it floats. I think it's a beautiful analogy for what resilience is. Resilience is like a piece of wood. You can push it under the water. You can waterlog it. You can hold it under the water, but sooner or later it seems to pop back up to the surface and get carried away by the current. And for me, that's what being resilient is all about. So I decided to write a book. And the book is called The Geography of Resilience. And I interviewed 130 people from all around the world who I consider have strong and sustained resilience through their lives. And included in the book are some well-known people. There's 8 Olympic athletes. There's a Nobel Peace Prize winner, a Pulitzer Prize winner, an Academy Award actor. There is a famous politician. There is lots of people in this book. And there's lots of people like you and me. And the conversations I had, 350 hours of conversations, dealt with issues such as domestic abuse, sexual violence, addictions, food disorders, living with physical and mental disabilities, and overcoming things like survivors of war and genocide. People who have seen their entire families destroyed in genocide. I've talked to current and former sex workers. I've talked with individuals who have lost children to just tragic accidents or to suicide. It's indigenous experiences. It's a broad range of topics and conversations. Now, as word got out that I was writing this book, I got contacted by this lady named Natalie, and with her permission, I'd like to read her message to you. Someone told Natalie that she needed to call me or contact me because she has an interesting story of resilience. She says, "Hello, John Paul. To be honest, I'm not even sure why I'm emailing you. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a known athlete or an actor. I don't think this is a story for your book. But in 5 years, I have faced what many people say are insurmountable obstacles. Recently, I've been diagnosed with PTSD and postpartum depression. I have been pregnant 5 times and I have 3 beautiful babies. My first child was born healthy, and then we went on to have another baby the following year. 10 days after my son was born, I received a call from the genetics department at Sick Kids Hospital that said, "Your son has cystic fibrosis." A piece of me died. I was completely heartbroken. From there, our lives changed forever. I wanted to give up right there and then, Jean Paul. I don't even know if this is what you're looking for, but my journey, or should I say, my nightmare, continued. I had a tubal pregnancy, and with that, I nearly died 6 months later. Then, another pregnancy, which resulted in my angel baby, who I was at least able to hold and to say goodbye to. I can't believe I'm telling you all this. And now I just had a baby girl who is almost 11 months old. And she too has cystic fibrosis. This is so out of character for me to reach out to a complete stranger, but if my struggles can help somebody else, I think it's worth the risk. I think it's worth the risk. So I was having conversations with individuals like this for a year and a half. One of the people I spoke with is Alyssa Parker. Now, you may not know this person, but I think this person is one of the most resilient people on our planet. Alyssa Parker is one of the parents who lost a child in the Sandy Hook mass school shooting in the US. 2 months after she lost her daughter, people were coming up to her and they were saying, "It's going to get better, Alyssa. You're going to be able to dream about your daughter. She's going to come back to you. You're going to get those memories again." But Alyssa felt frustrated because she wasn't feeling that. She wasn't getting that connection to her daughter and those memories. And she said, "JP, here's the thing. There was something getting in the way." And what it was? Anger. I was angry at the shooter, Adam Lanza. Now, I'm not sure how much you remember about that whole story, but the shooter was killed in the event. So, this is what Alyssa did and her husband. 3 months after they lost their daughter, they arranged to sit down and talk to the father of Adam Lanza. Because they needed to figure out what brought him to that point in his life. Why was he hurting? What was causing that problem? So she sat down with them and she said, "From that moment, I didn't forgive the shooter, but I started to forgive myself." And that has a lot to do with resilience. So, in the course of my interviews with people for this book, 4 qualities of resilience have come up. The first quality is the importance of being connected, finding your community. I tell people, because I get contacted a lot by parents, particularly parents who have recently discovered their child has been sexually abused or assaulted. And they ask me, "What can you do?" And I'm not a doctor. But through all this research, the one thing I know will make a big difference immediately, and what made a difference in my life in retrospect, as I look at it, get connected. If you're not connected, you're not resilient. Find your community. Find your tribe. I have a common mantra that says, "Find your tribe and love them hard." Second, surrender to the fall. My mantra, I have t-shirts made up for this, I've sold lots of these t-shirts over the years, is embrace the suck. As an elite athlete, running 253 kilometers, before I put that first step on the ground, I know it's going to suck. It's not going to be pretty. But you know what? The most beautiful things in life aren't pretty. Third quality. The beauty of the fault lines. You know, when we talk about earthquakes, we only talk about their devastation, the toll they take in human lives, and also the toll to our fragile infrastructure. But if you talk to a plate tectician, what they're going to tell you is, earthquakes are an important feature to any ecosystem because they allow rebirth and growth. They are critical. And when we think about any system that doesn't have an ability to flow, to change, to move, well, that's a system that's doomed to fail. So what I've learned in these interviews is we all have these fault lines inside of us. What I would invite people to do is to look deeply into those fault lines because you may discover that's the strongest, most beautiful part of you. And the fourth quality was learning to see yourself in others. Every single person I spoke to in this interview process was what I would consider not only resilient, but they were empathetic. They saw their own pain in other people. They saw their own loss in other people. And because of that, they found forgiveness for themselves by forgiving these things in other people. And that brings me to the last slide, the most important slide. This is a picture of Marianne and me that was taken 152 kilometers into my run. I was about halfway into it. Now, here's a little pro tip for you guys. If you're ever doing an endurance event like this, there is always time to stop to kiss your significant other. Trust me. So I stopped, I give Marianne a kiss, but here's the story behind this picture. This is the lady who I've been married to for almost 31 years now. This is the person who has seen me through addiction, suicide attempts, severe depression. This is the person who has witnessed and been standing beside me in a very public disclosure about childhood trauma. This is a person who has been with me every step of the way. This is a person who found something inside of me that I didn't believe I had. And she believed it was there and waited long enough for me to see it and recognize it myself. So my one hope for everybody in this room this afternoon, is to consider being that parachute for someone else, being that lifeboat for someone else, and being the person who brings out the strength, the resilience, and the beautiful qualities in another person. Because I think if we do that, we are all resilient. Thank you.